chromosomes. I told you I wasn't real sure where I came up with that diagram right there, but it's pretty explanatory. And we're just talking, guys, a strand of DNA, and you've got multiple little coded DNA, and you see all the coils on it all the way up through. And so we've got multiple chromosomes, and depending upon the species of the animal as to how many chromosomes that they have. So it resides in the nucleus of a cell. And that's where if we talk about steroids, etc., synthesis of new muscle, of new material. And so your steroidal hormones have to actually be internalized, and they'll go to work up here at the nucleus, which will start coding or synthesis of new, whether it's muscle, etc. So the genes are in linear order. And so even though we've got it here and they look all coiled up, those genes are in linear order. And so once we get them and we get separation, you can see each of the individual ones. Once we go through, you're going to have differences amongst species in terms of what genes, the location of this one on a chromosome for this animal may affect tenderness or may affect certain trait. Yet on a different animal, this same gene at this location may not, may affect something totally different. Chromosomes are going to come in pairs. And so that's where we were talking earlier. We're going to have pairs, but when we go back to gametogenesis, and you remember where Mendel determined that you get separation and that we get meiosis, each daughter on it has one set of DNA. And so once we get fertilization of that egg, it comes back together with the DNA from the sperm and the DNA from the egg for us to get our zygote. And so that's where we get back to our full pair. So chromosomes are going to come in pairs from each species. We had that term back before for gametes. And then the synthesis of a sperm or an egg is gametogenesis. So first book in the Bible, synthesis of gametes. So as we roll through, after they replicate, and I'm not going to worry as more about the centromere and the locations. There's a whole bunch of others, anaphase, telophase, in terms of where they move up and down the line before you get separation. Now, a couple other genetics. We already talked about allele back before as an alternate form of that gene. But one you need to know for sure, locus, okay, or loci. You may see it for plural. But guys, that's that position of that gene on that chromosome. And if we go right back up, it could be that one of those genes is located at a spot right here. And you've got a totally different gene that's located at a spot right here on that chromosome. And so we'll end up with a loci or locus right here, basically saying this gene right here may code for our weaning weight. We may have a gene right down here that codes for our birth weight. So different genes are going to be located at different spots on that chromosome. Now, different species, don't worry about it. That's just for an informational purpose. In terms of the number of chromosomes, I don't care one way or the other that you memorize those. If you need to learn them for a different class, do it to it. So, cell reproduction. Genes are going to be passed on to offspring. So in eukaryotes, we're talking about those that have a nucleus. So that would be us. Plants, yeast, protozoa. Prokaryotes, no nucleus. And that's going to be our bacteria right there. So basically, guys, we're not worried about the prokaryotes. We're strictly going to talk about eukaryotes. So multiple linear chromosomes, and we saw that. You know, hey, that's that chromosome we had, our centromere down through it. And so we've got linear chromosomes. We've got genes at various locations along that chromosome both ways. Always going to be in pairs on that. And diploid number. Diploid equals the 2n, and that equals a pair. So all diploid means, guys, is pair, okay? So your zygote, or your fertilized egg, is produced by joining a one-end gamete. So that would be a sperm and an egg. And so that goes back to Mendel's thing where we talked about segregation, and that offspring or that other plant basically got one shot of DNA from the sperm and another shot of DNA, or one shot of DNA from the male, one shot of DNA from the female. So if we start going through, guys, fertilized egg is a zygote. Diploid just means the pair right here of genes. And this one inner haploid means that half of the genes came from the male and the other half came from the female. So, haploid number, there you go. You just have one set of genes at those. Diploid number means that we have our pair of genes for each, okay, or our pair of chromosomes, excuse me, for each. So homologous just means that they're the same. So they're identical in their arrangement. If we talk about, let's say, like insulin and animals. So the insulin in a hog is very similar, except for a few different genes or a few different codes and amino acids in various locations, is very similar to the same insulin that we as a human possess. So they are said to be very homologous, okay, in terms of their sizes with it. Chromosome shapes, I'm not worried about. Don't memorize or waste time on that. And all that's showing, guys, is the differences here. Our telomere, the way we move up, our centromere moves up and changes so that we can get duplication of it. And we go through various processes. Now, a couple of things to know here. Somatic cells, normal body cells. So whether it's a muscle cell, skin cell, hair, etc. Germinal cells or gametes are going to be our sperm or our egg right there. And so the chromosome numbers and types, haploid means that they're getting, they just have one pair. And of course, we said diploid means they have the pairs, the chromosomes numbers for the somatic cells. So mitosis, a couple of different things in a normal world without COVID-19 and Laura. I'd make you explain these for an exam. Mitosis, guys, is nothing but cell division, period. So, and that means that the daughter cells, each of the two daughter cells are exactly the same as the parent cell. So, mitosis is going to be where we do it. It's going to be exactly the same. It's normal cellular division that we have in terms of growth. Meiosis, on the other hand, goes through two sets. And so meiosis comes down and is going to yield you two daughter cells, just like mitosis will. But when we come back on that second time, we get reductional division. And that way we have 4 of those at that point that have a half or 1N complement of chromosomes. So meiosis, the easiest way is say gametogenesis. We're talking about producing a sperm, or we're talking about producing an egg. And so they're going to have half of that complement that we need. Boom. Generate that one cell number that we've talked about. Boom. Equal opportunity for them to do. Goes back to some Mendel crossing over. And this is all it means, guys, is that occasionally we can have a gene that moves a location on them. And we'll talk about that way more in depth. Don't worry about the full detail here. The two daughter cells go through, and once we get the two daughter cells, meiosis, we're just taking them, lining them, separating them out, and we get 4 one-end cells. Okay, so there we got the synthesis down here, that's sperm or the egg. So, gametogenesis, we're going to further break it down. So, we can call sperm and eggs gametes. The same token, we have spermatogenesis, which is synthesis of sperm cells, and oogenesis, which is meiosis in the females to produce egg cells. Okay? Spermatogenesis continually. So a male is going to produce sperm continually. The cool thing about oogenesis, all the females, all those eggs are produced prior to birth. So when we start talking about a livestock animal going out of production, you know, then we're looking, and particularly if we're talking cattle, you know, they're going to spit out 1 animal per year. If we go back through and we're able to do embryo transfer and IVF and flush her, and we're able to get her to release more eggs per year, then we have an opportunity to increase the number of offspring that she can have prior to birth. So there's no way for that female, once it's born, to go back and produce more. Spermatogenesis, oogenesis, don't worry about the details of production. Couple of more terms. Boom, autosomes. That's a normal chromosome. Sex chromosomes. Boom, carry material to determine gender of the organism. So in mammals, you have the X chromosome and the Y chromosome is usually small. If a Y chromosome is present, you have a male. And if a female is going to be, if we have an X and another X. So we'll talk about a bunch of that. We get into secretariat and some of those others on as well. So sex chromosomes right there in mammals. Females XX, males XY. So the male controls the sex of the offspring. So if one of the sperm with a Y fertilizes the egg, then that offspring is going to be a male. If one of the sperm with an X fertilizes that, then we're going to end up with a female offspring. So the male in mammals is going to determine the sex of the offspring.